This all started when he enters the library to do his usual loser activities, but there are women in the vicinity, and he hates them because they're loud and annoying. Most importantly, they make fun of him for being a clumsy idiot who can't even stay calm when they're 5 feet away from him. When he accidentally drops his drawings, one of the girls picks it up and tells everyone that he's drawing hentai. Upon reading his sketches, Nagatoro introduces herself and calls him senpai, but not before roasting him and his manga plot because apparently he's trying to do a self-insert into his story and he's not even close to being cool because he can't do what the character can in his story. To prove that he's a coward, she asks him to reenact the scenes in the manga together. However, when it's finally time to be cool, he just can't because he's idiot maxing, which leads to her teasing him so hard he actually starts crying. Before leaving, she takes his story. That night, he gets haunted again by the light-skinned demon Haas, which continues the next day when she actually finds where he's hiding. Before entering the room, he returns her handkerchief and tells her he washed it, which makes her blush. She follows him inside and teases him that they're alone together, which means plot development. Looking around, she realizes that he's doing some art, so she offers to be his model, unbuttoning her shirt so he can draw better. He tries to decline comically, telling her to be normal instead. When he actually starts drawing, he keeps looking at her, making absolutely nothing on the canvas. She catches on to this, so she promises to reward him if he can actually do something other than stare at her. So he gets to work and starts drawing her, which takes him the entire day. But it's actually pretty damn good and even she is impressed. As promised, she gives him his reward, telling him to close his eyes. As he's about to get it, she leans in closer for a kiss, but as soon as their lips are about to touch, she flicks his nose and laughs at his pathetic optimistic thinking, roasting him again for not actually being able to get a kiss from just that. She calls him a twink for not drawing her thigh area, bullying him again into crying. After that, she follows him around and asks him to go out with her, which of course is another joke, and he keeps falling for her acts. He tells her she's just toying with him for the fun of it, so she sends him barreling down a canal, which he doesn't find too offensive. He just gets out of it and tells her it's no big deal despite his clothes all ruined and soaked. So she asks him if he ever gets angry, because she knows she's basically worse than his bullies. Unfortunately, Naoto isn't the type of guy to get angry very often, and instead just lets his haters leave as soon as they're done with him. He tells her that despite her bullying, he actually doesn't hate it. In fact, he has a bullying kink and he likes it a lot, but he doesn't even know her name, so he asks her about it. Haas tells him to call her the N-word, Nagatoro, writing it down on his chest. The next day, Naoto is finally alone in the art room, and he can't wait to read the hentai manga he bought online, but his private session is interrupted when Nagatoro appears once again to disturb the peace. So he immediately hides the manga behind his back. However, she has some kind of creep detector and knows he's up to something, eventually catching on to his plan. She offers to do it together, lowering his guard before taking the manga for herself. She pats him for trying to get laid, but tells him there's no way he's going to take the easy route with her. Once she opens the manga, she's immediately greeted with large anime assets, which according to him is very relevant to the plot. So she shows him one panel and compares it to him, roasting him for thinking that he can actually pull something like that. But in Naoto's defense, he just wants to read the story because it's a vampire story about true love. So she reads the manga and actually finds it very compelling despite the jump scares. She even tells him one of the characters resembles him, which is the poor soul who gets sucked dry. But she tells him it'll do just fine because vampires don't actually feed on a virgin's blood. He's had enough of her, so he asks her how she knows he's a virgin. So she challenges him, then looks at his neck and asks him if she can bite it like the vampire in the story. She tells him it's just a pinch, and it wouldn't be painful despite her canine teeth being built like a pit bull's. She inches closer before lunging at him like a hunter from Left 4 Dead, telling him that he's her prey now. He asks her what will happen if someone sees them, but she ignores it and starts harassing him, stroking his neck like a rod before leaning in closer for a big bite. However, his breath smells like a dead rat, but it doesn't stop her from teasing him endlessly. Later that day, she follows him on the way home and asks him if it's his first time getting a handshake. Naoto gets flustered and is beet red, especially since this is actually the first time a woman touches him on his face, so she asks him if he wants another one and she'll do it properly, edging him because she goes for his belly instead of the real thing. She laughs at him again for thinking he'll get another chance before leaving him. That night while reading hentai, he imagines Nagatoro giving him all that plot development, which actually gets him thinking. The next day, she appears once again to annoy him, but this time around, they're going to be playing the melon guessing game. The rule is simple, he just needs to guess where the seeds are located, and the prize is pretty much self-explanatory. He tells her he's not into groping people randomly, and there's no merit to winning, but she tells him there is, and it's a ticket to ask her to do anything. He can basically use the ticket as a get-out-of-jail-free card to stop her from annoying or bullying him, but he can also use the ticket to do even crazier stuff by getting her to wear a swimsuit or strip down her clothes. He thinks really hard and tells himself he'll do it so he can stop her from bullying him. And so the game begins. Nagatoro opens up with a double bull sign, hitting the targets expertly, which is actually a miss, but before he can say anything, she just starts playing with it like a Roomba going in circles. He begs for her to stop and tells her he's giving up, but she tells him it's now his turn to do the thing. Determined to get his revenge, he closes the gap and starts locking in at his targets. As he's about to touch her light switches, she pushes him off of her and tells him time's up, ditching him for her friends. After taking a massive L, he goes to a restaurant to continue working on his manga, but Nagatoro and her friends, along with some guys, just enter the restaurant. Apparently, it's a double date, and he's trying to listen to what they're up to. The guys are basically waffling about things like band and all that jazz, but Nagatoro doesn't give a damn about it. The guy even offers her to listen to one of his dumpster fire tracks. Meanwhile, our boy is just hiding from a corner waiting for her to trash the guy and his garbage music. But for some reason, she doesn't and just straight up tells him he should stop making music. Even the second guy gets humiliated so badly that he has to go back to the bathroom for the second time. On the way home, Naoto thinks about whether he's the only one getting bullied because the guys earlier were straight up destroyed mentally. But she appears behind him and starts walking with him, which ends up in more bullying. The next day, she appears in the art room again and asks him if he wants her to model for him, but he refuses, stating that he only wants to draw things instead of real people. So she undresses and shows him something he's never seen before, a school swimsuit. After school, heavy rain starts pouring in, and both of them have to run to the nearest shed. Under it, they try to dry themselves, but the rain starts pouring hard, so she invites him to dry his clothes at her house. Upon seeing her parents' shoes, he thinks he's going to get roasted by her family, including the cat, but it turns out no one is home right now. She tells him to stay for a bit, offering her brother's clothes while she dries his. She's even giving him a towel to use, but instead of using the towel normally, he thinks to himself it's the same towel that she used to dry every nook and cranny of her body. It's not, because she already knows he's going to sniff it like a crack addict. After drying himself, she brews some tea for both of them, teasing him again that he's acting twice as suspicious since he got inside their house. She knows it's his first time being in a girl's room, so she asks him what's the most common thing that two people do inside a room, and he tells her it's studying, but she catches on to him because they don't even have exams coming up. She then puts her hand on top of his, telling him they're going to smash like crazy, like Smash the video game. She tells him that it's her brother's and that she's pretty elite at the game, but he just trashes her with his insane Evo Moment 37, which genuinely annoys her. He thinks he's too hard on her, but after all the bullying, he's finally going to get his revenge. And so the next round, he just trashes her as usual, but as he's about to finish her, she blows on his ears and he immediately loses focus, losing the game. The two play the game the entire time, and once the rain stops, he thanks her for the good time, and she tells him there won't be a next time. The next day, Naoto finds himself in trouble because most of the seats in the cafeteria are occupied, except for Nagatoro and her friends. She invites him over, but this is literally hell for him because these are the same girls who laughed at his drawings a couple of days ago. Since now the spots are open, he just takes it like a man, but she pretends they're in a relationship, so the girls ask him if he expanded her domain already. But he's got the heavenly restriction, aka he's a virgin, so it becomes obvious he isn't her boyfriend. She's so possessive of him that the girls think he got reverse colonized. Then he gets bullied again with Maki telling him that he's less than a human, he's just a bug. But much to his surprise, Nagatoro defends him because Maki is taking it too far. With all the strays that he's catching, even he stands up for himself and announces to the whole cafeteria that he's not her boyfriend, cutting off mid-sentence to finally eat his lunch, which makes the girls laugh at him in victory. Later that day, Haas asked him why he never fights back, telling him that he should slap someone whenever they diss him. So they reenact what he should be doing, but instead of slapping her, he just cries like a pathetic loser, which leads her to bully him even further. Once he's had enough, however, he actually slaps her hard, but on the wrong cheeks. A couple of days later, while enjoying his lunch, Maki and Yoshi appear to disturb his peace. He thinks it's Hayase, but it's the worst people he wants to see right now. They finally find their hideout and start bullying him again, getting smugly stared at while eating. Then suddenly, they have the brightest idea to talk about melons and what makes them great, asking him if he actually touched one before. Apparently, some rumors are spreading that he's a virgin and a closed, cultured man. So to cure this disease, Maki asks him if he wants to feel her hysterical pillows, hypnotizing him like he's Alex Mason. Before things go south, he immediately heads for the doorway, but Yoshi grabs him and forces him to touch Maki's buns. But in reality, it's actually a red bean bun and not the real thing, which is a total disappointment. They laugh at him again, but Haas finally appears, looking all pissed and ready to throw hands, so they retreat, and she congratulates him menacingly for losing his hand's virginity. But when he tells her it's not the real thing, but bread, she has the brightest idea of doing the same thing. She offers him that she'll let him squeeze her black bean buns, rewarding him with a premium bean bun if he correctly guesses which buns are softer. After tucking the two breads inside her shirt, she asks him to feel them and check which one has the softer texture. He's hesitant to actually do it, but she tells him he's a coward if he can't do it, so he slowly touches the right one, closes his eyes, and does some quick massage. While he's doing it, the premium bean bun slips out of her shirt. So when he actually goes for the left one, he's feeling the actual thing. He doesn't even hold back and feels around the entire thing with both hands just to make sure it's the premium bun.
He opens his eyes. He immediately tells her which is the premium bun.
But he quickly realizes that he's basically going to prison for groping her. So Hayase resorts to domestic violence and beats him up with a premium bread. 2 days later, things go back to normal, and she volunteers to be his model, bringing a used sofa into the art room to be her personal bed. She mentions how he looks a little bit sad when she enters the room and notices that he is looking at the baseball captain, who is celebrated by his team and some of their schoolmates. He opens up about how he's not really good at anything except drawing stuff, so being praised certainly helps boost his confidence. But she tells him that to receive praises means to acknowledge and praise someone else first, so she asks him to praise her and give compliments. Anything will do. But when he thinks about it, anything he says can be labeled as creepy, so he praises her hair instead. She laughs at his goofiness but asks for more praises, so he tells her she's quite agile, and what she did the first time they met was pretty badass. In return, she praises him but not before judging him to see if there's actually anything worth mentioning about him. After that, they start their modeling sequence and she tries multiple poses, which are all quite provocative and too much for this virgin to handle. In the end, they settle for the normal-looking one, but he can't even draw properly without being hard at work, so she tells him she'll be taking a nap instead while he's working on his drawing skills. When she's finally asleep, he finally gets a good position to draw her, which turns out to be a pretty damn good sketch. When she wakes up, she takes a look at the drawing and gives him a reward, which is a friend with a damn toy emotional damage. After a week of hanging out and getting bullied, things are getting a little bit better, because Nagatoro is starting to get more touchy. When she challenges him to a tickle fight, Naoto accepts but chickens out when she reveals her school swimsuit uniform. She urges him to tickle her tender armpits if he's a real man, but she also chickens out when he's so close to that galaxy chocolate spot. Later that day, she shows him a reel about a sheep getting sheared and realizes that his hair looks like it can do a little shearing. He tells her he'll go to the barber shop, but she can no longer wait and brings out her brother's shaver. He squirms and says he doesn't get his hair cut so short that the barber needs a shaver, so she settles for haircutting scissors and a comb. At first, he's hesitant and tells her it's a lot of work, but after some delusional thoughts, he gives in and tells her to cut his hair. However, Maki calls her and tells her to send her notes to their classroom, which is a ploy to get her out of the room so they can cut Naoto's hair instead. A few seconds later, Maki and Yoshi enter the room, look around before finding the shaver, and ask him what's up with it. So he tells them about her plan for his hair, which gives them the idea of giving him a fate worse than death for the second time. The duo bullies him again, opting to give him the baldy, which activates his defense mechanism. Just as they're about to finish his hair off, Nagatoro arrives to rescue him, and the duo, as usual, ditches them again. After some time, she finishes his haircut, and it turns out really great for Naoto. For once, he does not look like a breedable twink from a Target cash registry. 2 days later, the summer officially starts and everyone's getting harassed by the sun on the way to school. Nagatoro asks Naoto to buy shaved ice with her, but when they arrive, they see that the line is longer than the lines on the iPhone 15 launch day. However, she's really craving some shaved ice, and no amount of human lines can deter her from getting that delicious summer treat. The problem is the line doesn't even budge even after queuing for 4 hours. She's running low on power and is about to collapse from heat stroke, so our boy drags her somewhere she doesn't absorb all the heat. After giving her rat poison, she heals back to 100% and she's ready to line up again, but tells him to wait for a bit because she's going to cook something. After a few minutes, she arrives with pure mustard ice cream, enjoying the best flavors Japan can offer. Later that day, she tells him that summer break starts tomorrow, and she's basically going to be preoccupied with helping her club, so she asks for his contact info. After getting his number, she tells him she's going to cyberbully him, so better be prepared. A month has passed by in the blink of an eye, and Naoto finds himself inside the Genshin Impact loading screen. This fitted lady tells her he's the savior of the world, so he's got to do some world saving, plunging him straight into the map without a glider. As he drops, a monster attacks him, and his magical powers are completely useless until the catalyst, Nagatoro, shows up as Naoto, sending the beast straight to Poseidon's lunchbox. And so their adventure starts, and they beat up a lot of monsters, eventually finding the Demon Lord's lair, which is his original quest. Turns out she and the girls he saved are all Demon Lords in disguise, and are just waiting for him to deliver them straight into their castle. Just as he's about to get bullied again, he wakes up and finds the real demons waiting for him. To wake up the next day, Nagatoro invites him to join them at the beach, as it's going to be the last day of their summer vacation. He initially refuses, but goes on anyway because he knows how much of a loser he is, so he plans to actually have some fun. On the way to the beach, he gets bullied by the trio, dissing him for being a gloomy loser. Once they arrive, Maki removes her t-shirt, revealing her bountiful peaks, and catches that he's looking at her. Yoshi proceeds to have Nagatoro jump scare him with her freshest melons, which forces him to leave the area. When he brings the drinks, the girls prepare to have the most fun of their lives while he sits underneath their summer umbrella, trying to finish his drawings before the summer actually comes to an end. After some time, Nagatoro notices how lonely he is, so she walks up to him and tells him to put on some creamy white liquid all over his body so he can resist the sun. However, when she's about to give him some sunscreen, he stops her and tells her that she can only be gentle with him if they're dating. Hearing this ridiculous thing, she just stomps him and gives him a foot. Then the girls join in the fun, giving him a triple foot, leaving him full of sunscreen enough to replace the ozone layer, so that was a lie. Throughout the day, the group spends their last day of summer vacation quite well, and even Naoto admits that it's really fun. With the summer vacation coming to an end, it's finally time for a summer festival to end, and everyone is dressed up for summer fireworks later tonight. In his mind, Naoto wants to be with Nagatoro, all dressed up with her summer yukata, but he ends up just spending his time playing whack Tekken games. But he can't keep still, because he is really waiting for a text to invite him just like the last time at the beach. Though he contemplates whether he should be inviting her to come with him, because that sounds really creepy even to him. So after 2 hours, he just comes in solo, but Yoshi and Maki find him again, kidnapping him and making fun of him for thinking he'll actually run into Nagatoro. Apparently, she's busy helping her club, so she can't really join the festival. Upon hearing this, he obliges, but the girls collar him so he can't leave. Then they send a pic to Nagatoro, making sure to lure her into the festival. A few minutes later, she arrives and tries to take the leash off of Maki, but she tells her that she'll have to fight for Naoto's ownership. With the rules established, the two groups start fighting over the mini-game stalls around them. 2 hours pass in the blink of an eye, and they compare the prizes they've won with Nagatoro taking Naoto's ownership deed through bribery. With the games done, Yoshi and Maki go off to do their own things, leaving the two alone. After some time, they look around, buying food here and there, teasing our boy that it's like a date. Fireworks soon illuminate the skies, and Nagatoro pushes him to the designated viewing spot. However, just like the shaved ice cream line, even watching fireworks is a drag. Naoto tells her they'll take a shortcut, but the line suddenly moves, and she's dragged along with it, so he has no choice but to pull her out and drag her to the best viewing spot in their city. She then ruins the moment by making fun of him once again, but this time he's got the clap back, forcing her to narrate every detail of what she thinks is going to happen if they're alone in a dark place. Then suddenly, a big firework reveals couples around them doing the exact thing that she's about to do, so they immediately retreat to civilization. On the way home, he tells her to come with him next year, and surprisingly she agrees, telling him that he'll have to wear matching yukatas with her. On the way to school the next day, he spots Nagatoro along with her friends. As usual, they're up to some stupid stuff again, but a couple guys join in the fun and he gets jealous. So he observes what they're up to, and unsurprisingly, they sort of get along with the girls effortlessly. Unlike his attempts, these guys are in a different league, and he's just a mole in a world full of diamonds. When one of the guys puts his arms around Nagatoro, he gets angry and tries to walk tough, but when he steps on a stick, he looks like he's alerted the horde. Maki and Yoshi recognize him and invite him to their table. The guys ask him what he wants, and he hesitates a bit before telling Nagatoro that he bought her for 2 elixirs and that they're leaving. And just like that, he bags 4 in one go, leaving the blind freaks clueless. And then he gets roasted again, but he actually likes it at this point, so it doesn't matter anymore. While hanging out with Naoto, Nagatoro notices how thin his arms are and tells him how thin his arms are, so she decides that she's going to train him for free. She tells him that in 2 months they'll be able to beat up anyone who bullies him, including her, but he says it's too much work, especially for someone like him who can only lift pencils instead of weights. There's an exception though for an exercise that doesn't need any movement, so she tells him to get on all 4s because she's going to pick his triceps into that of Kratos. Once he's on the floor, she sits on his back and tells him to hold his position for 10 minutes without getting hard or else he's going to get crushed. But for some reason, he gets even harder than before because she's basically edging him to whatever this exercise is. When a group of students sees what's happening though, they get embarrassed and stop doing their role play. Later that day, she asks him if he has any plans to actually study because their midterms are coming up. He confidently tells her that he'll do just fine because he's not an idiot, but she tells him that if he's too confident, he might repeat a grade, which means they'll be in the same grade. And if it continues, eventually, she'll become the senpai, and that means more bullying is coming his way. So he starts studying really hard because he doesn't want to be lumped in with the ditzy girls. Blondie tells him that they're down bad right now, and they're most likely going to repeat, so Maki and Yoshi ask him to tutor them. All this hard work bears fruit because he gets a couple of good marks, which means no repeating for him. Later that day, Nagatoro hears some very sus sounds coming from the art room. When she opens the room, she witnesses Naoto getting harassed by the girls into removing the splinter stuck in his finger. She looks really pissed upon seeing her favorite toy getting toyed with by her friends, so she takes the clip and removes it herself. On the way home, she asks him if he'll play rock, paper, scissors with her with a condition that whoever loses will carry the winner's bag. But she immediately loses to him, and now she has to carry his bags home. The next time he sets her to win, just before they separate, they do another one and he lets her win this time, carrying her on his back, but walking for a couple of meters on top of carrying both their bags. She starts to slip away from his hand, so he grabs them tightly, and she immediately runs away. Later that night, he keeps looking at his phone hoping that she'll call him, but when she does, she starts a video call showing him all her skin while taking a bath. He quickly apologizes for what happened, but she tells him it's no big deal even though they're both embarrassed. A couple of days later, they're both stuck with each other again while he's drawing some lamb and Nagatoro is shadow boxing like a pro, and she's really into it. She asks him to box with him, but since he can't do anything but be a nerd, he just becomes a punching bag for her. Later that day, she and her friends visit the art room to vandalize it, drawing the best pieces of art since Picasso. When Naoto arrives, he asks them what the hell are they doing in his place. Turns out there's a bunch of sweaty gamers playing Animal Crossing in their usual hangout place, and they can't really make them leave because they ignore them. So instead, they're crashing the art room before leaving. They make sure that they left a plan to create drama and chaos within the group. Then Maki turns to him because she believes he's not really a virgin, but is just acting like one, which means he's a fraud and she's about to cook him. But Hase tells him that he's a very passionate guy and thinks about plot and workouts all the time. Meki is basically trolling her, but Hayes isn't, so she asks her to place a bet. Basically, if she finds a hentai magazine in the art room, it means that Naoto is the most cultured man of all and Maki will have to buy her pancakes. But after 15 minutes of searching, she can't really find anything because Naoto strategically hid his magazine in the other room. Given that she looks defeated, however, he sneaks out of the room to fetch his sacred treasure and returns to the room, strategically placing the magazine behind him. He then calls her out so she can spot the magazine and immediately takes it from him, winning the game. The next day, she visits the art room again, and Naoto notices that she's wearing a new earring. According to her, it's new because she recently poked an earring hole, which gives her the idea to prick his hole as well. She believes he'll look good with earrings, telling him that he'll wear a matching earring with her. Of course, he blushes because it's quite romantic, but his hole needs to be drilled first, so he closes his eyes and prepares his ears to be picked. But she laughs at him for looking pathetic. A few seconds later, Sakura arrives with tears in her eyes asking for his help. Apparently, there's a stalker who's been following her for quite some time, and it's the same guy from the gaming club. She tells everyone that she's scared, but Naoto tells them they did it to themselves, especially with that sabotage. Sakura starts crying, and the group basically guilts him into helping her, with Sakura asking him to pretend to be her boyfriend for a day, just so she can stave off the mess she pulled by being manipulative. Haya is against it and tells them that he's very harmful and too cultured for his own good because if she lets him become her boyfriend for a day, she'll have to deal with 2 creepy stalkers on her rice cakes, which is not a good thing. Still, she asks him to be her boyfriend just for tomorrow until they can catch the ugly bat. The next day, Naoto dresses up in his best boyfriend fit, with Sakura arriving a few minutes later. Haya and the gang follow them around to document their date, but she's obviously not having a good time. It doesn't help that Sakura is also being too clingy while bringing Naoto to a place where he really wants to have a first date with someone. Before they can progress with a relationship, Has cuts it off and does a citizen's arrest on the fat weirdo following Sakura, ending their interaction once and for all. The fat dude cows down, apologizes for what he did, and swears he'll never do the same thing to Sakura. Later that day, both she and Naoto go home together, teasing him about his foiled first date thanks to her, but he tells her it's not really a genuine date since he's just helping out her friend. She tells him that he's not really ready for dates if he's too immature, and thinks about the plot all the time, which he admits. After a week, their PE day starts, and as usual, Naoto is a hot mess. He runs like someone who got shot in Detroit, and Haya is not happy with that, so after school she tells him that she saw how bad he was during the marathon, teasing him for being weak and pathetic. He admits that he's bad at running, but she tells him that no one is that bad at running unless you're missing a leg or two. He just needs to practice, but he's too stubborn, yapping about people with talent, and how he's just someone who simply doesn't have the talent for running, which she finds insulting. So she tells him that she's going to start training him into a healthy human being. That weekend, he meets with her, and he gets flustered seeing Haya's untanned body. And so they start running, but upon seeing how incredibly fit she is, he starts gaining momentum, eventually surpassing her for a hot minute before she takes over again, leaving him to eat dust. But he's pretty much cooked after running for 5 kilometers straight without resting, but they're not even close to the finish line yet. But she knows he's giving up without giving his all, so she bullies him again, telling him that he's a whimpering coward and that he doesn't have the guts. Even a grade schooler will beat him, which didn't really help him because he just ran away back home, which is another 5 kilometers, but apparently it's just a warm-up and there's more torture for him. Because she starts doing some stretches, then she starts showing him how flexible she is compared to him, asking him to do the same. But when it's finally time to stretch, he can't even move an inch without her help. She then tells him to stand up and starts doing some Dragon Ball Z fusion, which is exactly what Yoshi is thinking when she sees them. The next day, he thinks about his model for his next painting, and as usual, Nagatoro jump scares him again. With a culture festival coming up, he'll have to make something worth visiting by people and students, but right now he doesn't have a model who isn't bullying him or isn't Haya. Apparently, he wants to draw guys instead of girls, so she shows in his weird sketch of her last summer break, telling him that she'll report him to the principal if he doesn't pick her. So he agrees, but on the condition that she'll have to provide her own costume because he doesn't have a catgirl costume lying around. And so, the next day, she arrives with almost the same costume, ready to be his model. He thought he actually won for good, but this is double dubs for his weird fetish. Nagatoro's friends arrive and she tells them that she's modeling for Naoto, but she's going to be cooking yakisoba in their stall. Everyone shares what they're going to do except for Naoto, because he doesn't know what he'll actually present. A year ago, he just followed his art club president's direction, but with her missing in action, he'll have to do it himself. The girls cook him as usual, but Has tells him they'll be helping him so the art club can actually get some visitors with all the attractions, including his torture. However, he suddenly hears very distinct and familiar footsteps coming from outside. It's the club president. He immediately tells everyone to hide in the other room while he sorts out the mess. President Santa is a strict and stern senior who presides over the art club, and she immediately criticizes the utter mess that is their room. She tells him that aside from the art exhibit, she's here to talk about something. Apparently, some nasty rumors are going around that their art class is becoming a hostess club of some sort, and if he can't take it seriously, she'll have to permanently shut down the art club. But Haya and her friends overheard what was happening and stopped her from submitting the shutdown form. She recalls all of Naoto's hardships and defends his honor, criticizing Santa's lack of concern for the integrity of the art club, which Naoto kept in her absence. For her to suddenly appear out of nowhere to shut down the club is just a straight-up injustice. Hearing this, Santa tells Naoto that if he's so adamant about keeping his art club going, he'll have to actually present something worthy. So she challenges him to a double art exhibition, and whoever gets the most visitors will win. And if he loses, the art club goes down for good. He's afraid to take on the president, but with Haya assuring him they'll do anything they can to help him. Later that day, Hass and the rest mock the president for her very strict and overly serious attitude. But he tells them not to make fun of Santa because she's actually very capable, and his chances of winning are pretty much zero. Maki tells him they'll just do a cat-made cafe, and they'll surely beat her. But he tells them that last year they won 6th place out of 50-plus contestants, all thanks to Santa and whatever she's packing between those peaks. On top of that, she's also an ace artist, winning against other high schoolers and even college students. So Maki asks him what makes her so popular, and Naoto unboxes their winning masterpiece, the most revealing self-portrait she's got, that got yachts and everyone's loving it, including him. But with Nagatoro modeling for him, he's already cooked and knows that he's just going to take the L for this. Besides, he's not really that confident in competing against someone he looks up to, especially given the fact that she's an accomplished artist, and he didn't accomplish anything except for gratuitous yet pleasurable bullying. Even Maki and the rest of the group tell Haya she doesn't have the physique to compete against that Mount Everest President Santa is packing. However, Naoto tells everyone that despite Hass's lack of meaty buns, she's got the spirit, which doesn't really help their case. They're still going to be defeated no matter what, unless they bring in the big guns, which is a Catgirl cosplay. After school, Hass asks him if he can really win against Santa's insane art, which is really questionable. But Naoto assures her they'll gun it with just Nagatoro's everyday looks, because that's what sells the most. And so, for the next couple of days, he starts painting her with Nagatoro posing every now and then. But the problem is, Naoto can't draw properly, especially with all the pressure around him. He tells her that he's not going to drag her name and image, only to be humiliated by other people once he loses the bet. Instead, he's just going to take the L and call it quits with the art club. She tells him she's not really bothered by what people are going to say, but he insists that it's between him and Santa. The next day, he enters the room and sees that Santa already divided the art club in half so both of them can focus on their art, and is determined to win, so he picks up his brush and starts practicing. After a few hours of undisturbed painting, he manages to draw something good enough for a house display, but not enough for a cultural festival. The president appears behind and critiques his work, which is terrible at best because it lacks something. When he asks him what he's lacking, she responds that it lacks love and passion, which is the most important thing that an artist can do in his paintings. Nagatoro arrives a few seconds later and immediately thinks the president is modeling for Naoto, given her choice of clothing, so she freaks out and runs as fast as she can. But the president tells Naoto to run after her, because that's what art is. So when he catches up to her, he finally asks her to model for him again, recalling all the bullying she did and all the sweet things after all that torture. However, she's being too difficult, telling him to just let the president do it with him, because that's pretty much what works. Then she accidentally slips, almost falling into the pool, but he grabs her hand and tells her that he really wants to draw her just the way she is because it's the most attractive to him. And so the cultural festival is finally here, and after some rigorous work, Naoto finally has something to show to the crowd, which is an everyday portrait of Haya. Maki notices how he did so well in his painting, it almost seems like it's from his perspective as a boyfriend. Of course, he denies this and tells them he's just trying to show a side of Nagatoro that looks very attractive. But there's a problem because they still don't know what the President Santa has painted, so they do some reconnaissance. Hass asks him if he's not coming to take a look, and he tells her he doesn't want to compare himself to the president and be demoralized after. So she assures him he doesn't need to feel bad because he has a chance of beating the president. But after seeing her piece, she collapses because there's no way in hell she's going to win people over, especially with how insane the president's piece is. According to Maki, last year's piece was insane, but the president doubled down this year and made it even more insane. So she tells everyone to suit up because they're going to lose so badly if they can't salvage their situation. After finishing their work, Santa asks him about his piece and then tells him she's not going to lose to him just because he's her underclassman, challenging him to go beyond his limits. Later that day, A couple of interviewers ask them about their motives, and the president eloquently explains what she's going after, which Naoto fails to accomplish. Before they can leave, however, Nagatoro, led by Has, ambushes them and performs their famous TikTok dance, which for some reason is popular amongst the students, which is all just a ploy to lure people into checking Naoto's art exhibit. Maki tells Nagatoro to bully people because that's where she's good at, and it's working surprisingly well. As the hours go on, people flock to both their exhibits, checking out Nagatoro's everyday looks versus the president's ultra-revealing painting, which leaves boys satisfied and men fulfilled. Thanks to Has's charm, he's been trending all over the school, and even these girls are checking him out, asking him to teach them how to draw. After some time, Maki tells them to grab lunch together, so he invites Nagatoro to eat outside. However, she's quite mad at him for getting the attention of the girls flocking to his art exhibit, but he tells her all the attention, compliments, and praises he received were thanks to her time and effort for volunteering to be his model. He knows that if he did it solo, it would have ended badly, which basically means she brought colors to his dull and monotonous life, so he's really grateful for what she did, despite the constant bullying. And so, for the rest of the day, they enjoy the cultural festival, checking out the various food stalls set up all over the school. However, when they go back to see who wins, a lot of people are huddled up together outside their art club. It turns out the student council deems the president's artwork to be too sensitive for high schoolers and too unsafe for the cultural festival. The student council president tells Santa that even though art is subjective, she can't just expose her assets in the most artistic way possible and call it art. However, she's going too far, and for the first time ever, Naoto steps up to defend the president's honor, stating that art has its cultural value, and it's not limited to what they perceive as the correct interpretation of it. He tells them that the president's art, despite its revealing nature, inspired him to take his art style to greater lengths, which is drawing Nagatoro's portraits. He believes it's very unjust to remove the president's piece just because they think it's too damn good. Has also steps up and tells the student council president that the painting itself is a masterpiece, with Yoshi backing them up with footage of others appreciating President Santa's Himalayan mountain peaks. With things finally settled, President Santa tells them she's allowed to continue, but she's giving the victory to Naoto, who's actually the one carrying the art club the entire time. As the loser, she'll have to do something for them, and it's wearing a bunny girl costume. Basically, she was blackmailed to sell merch for the girls, but she thinks this form of oppression is also a type of art. Meanwhile, the girls got the bands thanks to President Santa's unquestioning stupid maxing. After the festival, Nagatoro meets up with Naoto, freaking out when she thinks the president is stripping. However, she's got some profound words for them as she critiques Naoto's art, stating that every bit of it might be a little unrefined, but it's definitely filled with a lot of love. Therefore, she likes it. The announcer then tells them there's going to be a concert soon, and Maki and the rest hurry to the concert grounds. The next day, life returns to normal, and the art class survives, which means Naoto is not going to try politics. Most importantly, he gets rewarded with a genuine kiss at the end.